In the previous tutorial, we have discussed about how we are going to implement linked list. So we discussed three main steps to create a singly linked list in C++. The first step is to create a node structure. The second one is to assign the pointers and then allocate them in the main memory using the malloc function. And in the last part, we have used this operator to assign the data to each node. And we know that the first node of the linked list is referred as head. So in this tutorial, we are going to do some operations on this linked list. So the first operation that we are going to do is to display the contents of our linked list. So we will create a function display and we will display the contents or the data of the linked list. So let's suppose our linked list looks like this. The first node was having the data 1, which you can see here. The first node was having data 1, the second node was having the data 2, and then 3. So then we are going to assign the next pointer. This is the next pointer, and similarly there is another node, second, which also has a next pointer which points to the last node, which is the third node, and finally the last pointer is assigned as null. So to display the contents of the linked list, we are going to pass the reference of the head node as a parameter. And we know that the head pointer is the first pointer that is assigned, that, or we can say that refers to the first node of our linked list. So we're going to pass the head node as a parameter. Let's suppose I'm calling the function. So this is a function call. So I will pass head as a parameter to the function. So this is just the function call. So in the function definition, where we are going to write our function, we are going to do two steps. We are going to follow two steps. First of all, we will pass, since we are passing the head pointer, and we know that the type is struct node, and let's pass this pointer to some n node. So the two steps to display the contents is, the first step is to use a while loop. And in the while loop, we are going to follow two steps. In the first step, we will just display the contents of the node by using cout. To display, we will just access the data of the n node. And the second thing that we will do is to assign the head pointer to the next pointer. We are going to assign head to the next structure, because we want to traverse from one node to another, and to do that we will just assign n, which is the head reference, we're going to assign it using the next pointer. So you can see that this line is very important, and we will just include this line in the while loop, and the while loop will run until and unless the value of n is equals to null. So the basic idea of traversing in a linked list says that first you will have to take a first pointer to the head pointer, and this points to the first element of a linked list. We will display the content of the data, and we are going to use this check statement, and whenever this pointer becomes null, it means that we have just come to the end of our singly linked list. The next step is that we are going to assign head to the next structure so that it will point to the next structure. And the reason why we are pointing this head to the next structure after each iteration is to display the content of that particular structure. So this line is used to assign this head pointer to the next structure. Since we know that the next pointer points to the next structure, so we have assigned head using this operator. You can see this operator, and it points to the next pointer. So in this way, the while loop will just check the statement, it will display the data, and it will assign this head pointer to the next structure, and it will go on and on until and unless the value of the pointer is pointing to the null. So let us now just write this function in C-line IDE. So first of all, I'm going to make a function call here. In the function call, we are going to pass reference, a head reference which points to the first node. And so now I'm going to write the function itself. And since the function is accepting the parameter of type node, let's say this is n. So now we're going to use a while loop, and we know that while loop will run until and unless the value of this pointer becomes null. So first we will just display the data of this pointer n. In the next step, we are going to assign the n pointer to the next structure, and in this way this while loop will run again and again, and after each iteration this n pointer will point to the next structure, and it will then display the result, or you can say the data of that particular structure. So this is how we are going to perform a display operation on this linked list. And we know that data structures, in these data structures we will have to perform some operations. So this is the way how we are going to display the contents of the linked list. So the second operation which we are going to discuss here is how to insert an element after a particular node, So let's suppose I want to add a node 5 in after this node 2. So let's suppose I want my linked list to be like this. To achieve this, I will have to insert this node, and to insert a node in a linked list after a particular element, you are just going to point you will just have to change this pointer, and this pointer will now change, and it will not point to 3 but instead it will point to 5. So this pointer will get changed to this one, and after that we are going to make the next pointer of this node point at 3, and you can see that now our linked list becomes 1, then 2, and the next pointer of 2 is pointing to 5, not 3, and then it will point to 3. So in this way we can insert an element after a particular node, and to do that we will have to just pass the reference of the node where we want to insert the element, and we will have to pass the data that we want to insert in it. So let's now write a pseudocode of the insert after function. So let's write the implementation of the function. Let's say the name of the function is insert after, or you can simply write it as insert after, or you can simply write it as insert function. So this insert function, let's not define it here. Let's see first how we are going to make the function call. So we are going to make a function call. So in the function call we are going to pass two arguments. The first argument is the data of the node that we want to insert, and we will have to pass the reference of that node which is known as the previous node. So let's suppose this is our linked list 1 2 3, and let's suppose I want to insert 5 after 2. So I will have to pass the reference, or you can say the pointer that is pointing to this previous node 2. So to access or to pass this the pointer which is pointing to this node, we know that we are going to use a head pointer, and we know that head next is pointing to this node 2. So if you want to access or pass the reference to this structure 2, you will just pass this line in the argument. So we are going to write it like this: head next. So let's suppose you want to insert 5 after 3. So this will change to head next, and once again you will have to write next. So this line will point to the third node of our linked list. So because we are going to insert 5 after 2, we are going to pass the reference of the previous node like this. So this is head, and this is the next pointer, and then again the next pointer. So head next will point to 2, and this points to the structure 3. So now let us just define our actual function here. So we are going to implement the function here. So first of all, we know that since this is a pointer, we will just write the type as struct node pointer, and since this is the reference to the previous node, you can see that this is the previous node, we will just name it as previous node, and then we are just providing new data, so we will just write it as int new data. So these are the two parameters that we are giving to the function insert after. So let's see the steps that you should follow to insert this node. The first step is to check whether this reference is not null, because if this reference is null, you cannot insert 5 after this. So you will have to check whether this previous node is null or not. So I will write here check if previous node is null. So I will just write an if else, an if condition, if previous node equals null, then we will display that previous node cannot be null. So this is our step 1. The next step is to allocate this new node. So to allocate this new node, we are going to use the malloc function, and before that we are just going to create a structure node pointer which points to the new node. Since we are creating a new node, and this node is 5 in our case, so first of all we are going to allocate this in the main memory, and we know that we will use malloc function, and we have seen the usage or how to use the malloc function in the previous tutorial. And then we will just write the size of struct node. So this is simple. We are just assigning a new node, and then this is step 2. Next step is to put the data in this node. So to put the data in this node, we will just point, we will use this operator, and we will just assign the data of this new node as new data. So we know that now this structure contains data of 5, because we will pass, we're not passing 8, we're passing 5 here. So if we will pass 5 here, this new node will contain data 5. But now we will have to work with the pointers. We will have to change this pointer, and we will have to make it point to 5, and we will also have to point the pointer of this node to 3, which we have seen earlier. So what we're going to do is we are going to make next of new node as next of previous node, because previous node is pointing to 3. We are just assigning the pointer 5 to assign it to the 3. So we are writing this make next of new node as next of previous node. So we will write it like this: new node next is equals to previous node next. And we know that previous node is pointing to 3, so the next of previous node is 3, and we are just assigning this pointer to our new node. And the next step is to change the pointer of this previous node to point to 5. So we are going to move the next of previous node to our new node. So I will write this line here, previous node, the next of the previous node will be equal, or it will just point to our new node. So this is how we are going to implement our insert after function. So let me just give you a summary of this insert after function. So what we are going to do in this function is we are going to pass the reference to the previous node and the data as arguments to the function. And we know that we can access, if we want to access 2, I will just write head pointer next, because head pointer next points to 2. In the function, we are going to just create another previous node pointer which is pointing to the previous node, and we are creating a new variable new data which is having the data of our new node. Then the first step is to check whether this previous node is null or not, because if the previous node is null, that means that our linked list has ended and you cannot add this new node after null node. So after checking that, we will just display that previous node cannot be null. So the step 2 is to assign to create a new node. So in this line we have created a pointer to the new node, and we will allocate this new node in the memory just like we have done for these nodes. And then we will just assign the data of this new node to the new data, and we know that new data has value 5, so the data of this new node will become 5. But at this point we have not worked with the pointers. We will have to change the pointers to just insert this 5 in between 2 and 3. So the first step that we are going to use, or we are going to perform, is to make the next of our new node as next of our previous node. Because previous node is pointing to the next node 3, we are just going to assign the next of the new node as the next of the previous node, and this makes this will just make this pointer. The next step is to assign this pointer. So we will have to assign the previous, we will have to move the next of the previous node to this new node, and to do that we will just write this line, previous node or the next of this previous node will now not point to 3, but it will point to our new node. And in this way we are going to implement this insert after function. So we have performed 2 functions on our linked list data structure, and we will see, let's see how this works in our C-line IDE. Since I have already written the code before, I will suggest you to just write it yourself and try to run it and see the errors. And so I'm just going to take you to the C-line IDE to show you how it works. So you can see that this is our whole code. You can see that here is our display function, and in this display function we have used while loop. We have printed the value of the data in the structure, and then we have just pointed, we have used the statement to point to the next structure. and this while loop goes on and on while displaying the data of each node. And then we have created a function insert after, same as we have done here. And you can see that we have first checked that our previous node is null or not, and then we will just display whether it is null or not. You can just change this line like this in C++, previous node cannot be null, like this. So the next step is to create a new node structure and then to allocate it in the main memory. Then we have just assigned the data of this new node to the new data. Then we have done these two steps to change the pointers. So this is our main function and this is our list, and you can see that first we will insert 5 after 2. So let's see what will be the result. So you can see that the answer is 1, 2, 5 and 3 because we have inserted 5 after 2. So what if I want to insert 5 after 3? So we will just change the reference to this to the previous node. So we will make it as second next, because the next pointer of the second structure is pointing to the third node, and we know that the third node is 3. So let's see what will be the output. So you can see the output is 1, 2, 3, 5, and now 5 is inserted after 3. So in this way we have implemented these two important functions in our linked list data structure. So thanks for watching.